Hello and welcome back to Rocinante Podcast. Sean P. McCarthy here, as always, with Angela Nagel, and we're joined once more by fan favorite guest Malcom Kyeyune to discuss the ongoing American century of humiliation. We're now in the longest federal government shutdown in our history. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about food stamps. But before we get there, we should just spend a moment to discuss the victory of Zohran Mamdani in the New York City mayoral election. This guy's an avowed democratic socialist. He's called what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide, and he just won an election in New York City, the nerve center of American Zionism. So it does seem significant, but of course, there are people on the left who think he's a sellout. I thought I came up with calling him Zohran Mamdani, but I searched on Twitter. Others beat me to that months ago, but I saw somebody... Yeah, somebody came up with Zioran Mamdani, which I thought that was clever. But, so I guess just to kind of start with first Malcom and then Angela, what are your general thoughts and takeaways from Zohran Mamdani's victory?
I am very happy that, New York City has become the crown jewel of the Dar al-Islam, the House of Islam. Baghdad has fallen on hard times, but now the new caliphate, the Zohran Caliphate, has its new capital city. I mean, he's a 12er, this is an actual bridgehead for the Islamic Republic of Iran. The mullahs, they lost Syria, but they gained New York. So I guess the axis of resistance is doing pretty well these days. But in all seriousness, I guess this is pretty significant. I reluctantly admit that, yes, there are things to discuss here, apart from the memes. And to start with, one thing that's useful to think about, which you alluded to, with the Zohran and the Siran and all of that stuff. Yes, this guy basically, he walked back a lot of the stuff. I think he's kind of a definite maybe on arresting Netanyahu now. He sort of moderated his stance on that. And he had a call with Barack Obama and all of those people that was really friendly and all of that stuff. But still, this isn't actual, we are down to sort of making a virtue out of necessity in terms of the Zionist position in the US. To me, I don't think it's debatable that this represents a pretty big milestone in the Democrat process of leaving Israel behind. Because, if you want to be pro-Israel, Mamdani is now the zero level of being pro-Israel. If you say, okay, we should arrest Netanyahu and Zionism is bad and Israel is committing a genocide, that is no longer okay, you get kicked out. That is the moderate centrist position here. And it didn't used to be that way. In fact, it wasn't that way a couple of weeks ago. And if you want proof of that, you can just look at the Republicans who are having an epic struggle session and internal civil war over this stuff right now. The Heritage Foundation is being torn apart from the inside. And people are calling for Tucker Carlson to be assassinated and all of that stuff. It's really wild. But the Democrats, they're the worst part of their own internal struggle sessions and sort of internecine fighting, that's moving into the rearview mirror, I think. So that's one takeaway of this election. I haven't really seen a lot of Democrats really going, okay, well, this is a crisis that we have to fix now. I think people are willing to give Zohran Mamdani a chance, not just because they think they can co-opt him, which they do think, but also because none of this is particularly relevant anymore. There's no point in trying to co-opt him to become a pro-Israel stooge, because there's no future in that. And I think people are coming to that conclusion organically, even within the establishment.
Yeah. It must be best of both worlds to be a Taqiyya Islamist, where you can not be an infidel, but still, get stick and poke tattoos and do nose drugs in Bushwick. because you're implementing the caliphate in New York City, as these people seem to believe.
Yeah, I mean, you can visit like the gay club at the top of a skyscraper and you can just, chill out. But if you feel like, a bit, cute or whatever, you can just start throwing the gays out the windows. Like you have, options.
Well, and we're being glib, but they really did like talk about this guy like he's an Islamic terrorist, which, I mean, these are this is basically borderline incitement to murder. And it didn't quite work at beating him at the ballot box, but you have to imagine this kind of stuff will still be around. So I assume he takes the threat to his life seriously enough, or he's just going to sell out completely. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, though I think that, like, for various reasons, I mean, on the list of, enemies of Israel to be assassinated, like, he can, as long as Tucker Carlson is still alive, I think Soren is pretty fine. Like, that is actually, like, a thing that I think there's, like, a 5% chance of, like, someone mysteriously shooting Tucker just because of how infected that battle is. Like, Soren, yeah, they're gonna call him a terrorist and all of that stuff, but I think that, like, for institutional reasons, like, he's not at the risk of the JFK treatment. Like, they have other fish to fry. And that in itself is just kind of an indicator of just how massive the political collapse is right now.
Well, just one other thought from me, and then I want to hear from you, Angela. But so Zoran's made indications that he's going to keep Jessica Tisch as the NYPD commissioner, in charge of the police in New York, and she's made all sorts of comments about massive rising anti-Semitism after October 7th, where people would protest Israeli genocide in Gaza. She's made it very clear that she thinks that is anti-Semitism. This is one of the people who led the crackdown on the student protesters against the Israeli genocide in Gaza when she was a police commissioner. So it's one of those things where you see a lot of predictions online that there's going to be another 9/11 now that Zoran Mamdani is the mayor, and it almost seems like a threat. So I'm not sure his exact reasons for keeping Jessica Tisch there, but it seems like in this kind of situation where you are getting threats of your life, you are getting people suggesting that they're going to do another 9/11 in New York. It seems to me like it would be a better idea to just have your own people in charge of the NYPD. Like there's a photo that I saw going around of Salvador Allende on his inauguration parade with General Pinochet behind him in the car, and that's like, to me, that was Jessica Tisch still in charge of the NYPD if Zoran Mamdani when Zoran Mamdani is sworn in January. Just seems like you should have your own people in charge of the people with the guns. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a lowly podcaster and Substacker.
Well, my thought on it was, first of all, very sensible social democratic reforms are popular on the economic side. So it's not surprising that that stuff was popular. But also, it does seem like it could be a return back to, or a way to return back to what was the norm before Trump, which is a kind of Sorosism. And, you can't have an empire governed by an insular particularist ideology. It has to have a universal application. Like every empire had to come up with something like this, going all the way back to Constantine. There had to be a universal way to become part of the system. So, I mean, something like Trumpism is just it's not, even though it may boast about we're going to invade this and we're going to invade that, it's actually not an imperial ideology. It's small and particularist, and maybe existed purely for the function of pushing through a number of things in Israel that would have been difficult to push through under normal circumstances. So, if Trump and Netanyahu can be punished or can be defeated and will go away, and maybe there'll be a return back to something more like Sorosism, USAID, a universal human rights, the United Nations, all this kind of stuff. That is a more appropriate ideology for a country that, is still an empire and, presumably wants to continue being one. So that's what it seems much more like to me. I mean, that is fundamentally his politics.
Well, I just wanted to give you both, actually all three of us, the opportunity to play the hits one more time and talk about the American left, and maybe even reference Bernie or something. I mean, it's coming up on a decade. We've sort of been having this same conversation, but something that struck me is Zoran Mamdani. He led this massive increase in turnout in New York City. Most voters since 1969. You can get some sense of who those voters were from the exit polls. They're imperfect, but one division is by income. Cuomo won the really rich and the people making less than 30,000. But what I thought was more interesting is the breakdown between those with college degrees and those without. So, like, according to the NBC News exit poll, but also other exit polls back this up, the majority of voters in the New York City election we just had either a bachelor's degree or a advanced degree, a master's, a PhD, whatever. The majority, the count is about 58% had either a bachelor's degree or higher. And so, of course, Mamdani, he cleans up with people with bachelor's degrees or graduate degrees. Associate's degrees, according to NBC News exit poll, they were split 46-46. But then attended college, no degree, that goes to Cuomo. High school graduate goes to Cuomo. Not a high school graduate goes to Cuomo. So I'm just wondering, to me, it seems like you can kind of replicate this Zoran Mamdani model for the American left within the American cities. But if you want to take power in the U.S. nationally, you need to do something about, it seems like the left has a problem with people who don't have bachelor's degrees. What do you two think about that?
Well, I saw probably the most succinct summary of the election from a very surprising source, actually. Like, there's this guy, he has a frog avatar. He's like a financial guy. He's like Carl something. I'm looking it up. Oh, Calvin Froedge.
Yeah, I just want to say, Malcolm, like, your followers, some of the most insightful anime racist profile picture people I know.
Yeah, I mean, I have ascended into, enlightened centrism. So I have both extreme leftists and sort of, anime racists nowadays. But like this Calvin Froedge, he's like a libertarian or whatever, like a pretty rich guy. But his summary of what happened in New York was really, I think it cut to the bone of what's going on here. He basically said, without any particular animus, like, okay, the rich in America, having gotten used to, decades of socialism, wake up one day and are utterly shocked that the poor also want it. And I think that is kind of the blessing and the curse of the American left, where it's like, at this point in the system, like, everyone obviously wants socialism. If we by socialism mean like this colloquial, redistribution of resources toward my group, which is not doing well. But the problem of the United States right now is that it is, in economical terms, it's shrinking. Like, there's less resources to go around every single day. So the rich, like, someone like, what's his name? That guy on the All In podcast, David Sachs. Like, David Sachs was crying and whining and bitching because, like, Silicon Valley Bank needed a bailout. And then when people in New York say, yeah, well, we need free buses, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, socialism is taking over. In a functioning American empire, there would be enough to go around for everyone. But right now, like, the main story is just that for someone to win, at least two other groups have to lose. So yes, Soren can do this, and he can do it maybe even successfully inside New York, as long as there are at least two other groups that lose out. And if you want to be like a pro-worker guy, like with rural whites, you're never escaping that basic math. Like, it's a negative sum game. And it will keep being a negative sum game until the empire collapses, like, because like that is the economics of empire on the downslope.
Any thoughts on that or the American left generally, Angela?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it makes sense because if if you're in a major city and you are in some way economically connected to the part of the economy that deals directly with government, it makes sense that you would be in favor of somebody with these kinds of policies, because also it's not just localism either. You know what I mean? Like everyone knows this is significant in a national sense, so you're expressing not just local and class interests, but also a kind of worldview. So it's sort of like the way, the people who live in, Moscow or Washington are going to have the most pro-Moscow or pro-Washington, views in terms of institutions and things like that. What socialism means in this case does involve a greater degree of government oversight over sort of gangsterism and theft and stuff like that has gone on under Trump, which the people who would be voting for Mamdani are not going to benefit from. So yeah, I basically think Malcolm's right. It's that calculation.
Yeah, and just to make a really quick point, like I haven't followed the good old DSA in New York, like the Amber A. Frosts of the world, Chapo Trap House, and so on. I don't really know what their party line is today, but I mean, I would guess, and this is why I don't feel any animus or like any need to criticize them or anything like that. But I would guess that if you got them, at least in private, off the record, they would basically say that, okay, our political program, we ourselves see that it's kind of irrelevant in the sense that, yes, we can debate how to distribute like the cabins on the Titanic, like what should be an equitable distribution of resources within the context of this ocean liner. But we don't really, like the ship itself is sinking, and that is really the big story. And we don't have any real answers to that. And of course they don't. And like, if you don't have any answer to that, which I don't think there is one, like your politics can never be quote unquote revolutionary in that sense. Like they have a best sell by date that is very like in your face right now.
Well, and that's a good transition into the shutdown, the century of humiliation, the collapse of the empire, and all that. But I guess, I mean, wouldn't the answer be, and maybe structural forces would just prevent this, but wouldn't the only answer be some sort of political movement has to take national power, actually grab the commanding heights of the economy, and do Hudsonite economics or deal with the rentier class, do something at the kind of national level? Isn't that really the only thing that can be done to prevent the ship from sinking?
Yeah, though I think that at this point, it's too late to stop the ship from sinking. And I think everyone knows that. And
I guess I'm going to relapse on drugs, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, like, this isn't like a call to despair in the sense that, and a lot of people like have a hard time grasping this, but like the current sort of, if America was France, we'd have this formal system of like numbered republics, but like the current American republic has not existed for even 100 years. Like if it disappears, that's not the end of the world. That's not even the end of America necessarily. So saying, yeah, it's over. Like, yeah, you could say to the French, like, yeah, the Fourth Republic, it's over, dude, it's dead. And people wouldn't say, oh, well, I guess I'm going to kill myself. But like that would not be seen as a rational response. So like that sort of instinct or myopia is the first thing that has to be dealt with. But in terms of like saving the American empire, like the thing about empires is that they are like wealth engines. They transfer wealth from somewhere else into the center of the empire. But they can do this through various mechanisms. The Romans had one way, the British Empire had another. The American Empire has like a method that is quite different from the British. But invariably, the cost of running the punk, kind of like AI today, actually, where it's like you can sell a video. Well, you can't actually sell like this stuff. You have to give it away for free. But like it costs a lot of power and money to generate like a 40-second AI video. And once that cost of operation goes over what you're getting out of it, the economics turn negative and the empire begins to shrink. Because any attempt at expansion will just put you deeper in the hole. And when that happens, what you get is the politics you see in the US today, where it's like all of this stuff is about who gets to pay the costs. So to take AI again as an example, like this bubble is collapsing right now. But even if we were to assume it could go on for another year or two, it was always premised on the fact that like it could just loot the power resources of the US. Like these AI data centers, like they're not cost effective even today, but the natural sort of assumption that is baked into all of even the like cost models that make sense are that we will get power for free. And like the American consumer of power will just take it on the chin. Like we will steal their power in like primitive AI accumulation and they will be left paying the bill for it. Like the AI companies have no financial resources to build new power plants. So again, like this is how politics works. It's just about finding another group to loot in order for the economics to make sense.
Yeah, and the model of a kind of emerging nation doing essentially a war economy to, massively boost naval and military capacity, that's also a kind of a tapped out thing, right? Because that's not that makes sense if you're an emerging economy. It doesn't make sense for something that is already an empire.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not trying to be. It's not trying to gain the position of an industrial exporter to the world.
Yeah, and China has like 400 million basically peasants, which they can very cheaply bring into the industrial economy, and they can reap massive sort of benefits in increased like productivity. There are no peasants left in America.
Yeah, America has always done that through immigration.
Yeah.
And, that was the kind of red meat or whatever to a lot of Trump's base was that they would stop immigration. But it's not, the economic system is not designed that way. And so they'll just do lots of like based meat, like footage, like AI footage that they're always like putting out on Twitter. But it's not like they don't have an answer to that problem,
What if we like really lead into being a doomer podcast and start doing we'll just start doing ad reads for services that help Americans get EU citizenship. This is the Escape podcast with Sean and Angela.
I mean, I can actually hook you up with that. I have a friend who's in that business, like for real. Yeah. So yeah, like you can do ad reads for movetorussia.com. It's like,
but that's like, that's the way I feel about American politics now is it just seems like everybody is grifting. And so of course that's like my hesitation with Zoran is, I mean, like I think AOC is a complete narcissist and a fraud, and you're just kind of it seems like the shoe's already dropped or it's about to drop. I mean, and so Angela and I, we start this podcast to be like, here's the truth of what we see of it. It would be appropriate for us to just lean into the American model and be like, yeah, we're just spreading FUD. We're just selling a service to make you flee the country or whatever.
Yeah. Well, the naval transition is kind of unstoppable. Like I was saying, I think on the last, maybe the Q&A episode, we were talking about it. Venice to Portugal, the Netherlands, Britain, United States. There's no, like, in many cases, like, it was just a case of somebody discovering a better route, and it just ends. The empire finishes at that point. So, I mean, that is the predictions for that. If we take that as an unavoidable kind of switching moment, the predictions for that are anywhere from 2027 to 2035 or something like that. So, and I mean, military spending almost kind of can't like get any higher. Like they can't. There's no more place to squeeze money from to put in that direction. And even the peak China thesis people who say, oh, but that's going to collapse in 2035, right? That's one of the claims that's out there. The main basis for that is that basically that they'll have a population crash. And the other one is sort of, well, it's like related, that they'll have a population crash and that the model of just basically government spending on infrastructure will, I don't know, stop working is kind of the theory. But, there's a couple of things to think about there. One of them is secessionism. The United States of America is most similar to the USSR in terms of how it's, it is a political construct. So a lot of the people that say, oh, nothing will ever happen, America will just continue being number one, and this is the doomerism is all bullshit, they always base their arguments on the idea that the federal continental system that was built is sort of just going to stay there in place. But it's not like that, because, if, for example, Japan or Ireland or somewhere has a massive economic meltdown, right? Ireland will still exist. It will just have a different government. Whereas the United States of America is a very, it was never like a deeply rooted, like centuries rooted, nation in that sense, right? It wasn't like a nation state. So it is already a federal system, which, the intelligence services and stuff have to constantly be on guard and on watch for secessionist tendencies, right? And they can really crack down on them, even massacring people and stuff when they see this stuff happening. In fact, I'm sure that's probably most of what they spend their time and budget on. But already you're starting to see quite mainstream people saying secessionist things in California and Texas, places like this that are big enough to do something like that. So the political construct of the federal continental system is much more fragile than a real nation state.
Yeah, I've got two things to say here. First, a general point, and then a response to, or sort of a continuation of your argument here, Angela. But like the general point I would like to make is just that people tend to think like, oh, when is the revolution coming? Blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, you're living in it right now. Like if you read a history book about the French Revolution, that stuff lost. It depends on where you draw the line, kind of arbitrarily. But like we're talking 15, 20 years in a lot of like if you include the pre-revolution, if you include sort of the National Assembly, the Reign of Terror, the Directorate, and so on. Like this is a long ass time. And the first parts of it, the before the calling of the States General, is basically like the executive fighting against the legislature until the like political power collapses. That's the phase the U.S. is in right now, and so we're like these things are not, oh well, they could happen. Like the process has already begun, and if it doesn't feel like the sky is falling, and if you wake up and you have to go to work tomorrow, well, I mean, people had to go to work during the French Revolution. Like you've been sold a bill of goods if you think that like a revolution happening means, oh well, I never have to go to work again. No, sorry, like that's not what they're about. And then to sort of continue your point here, Angela, the way that the federal United States was created, like the modern United States, where most of the power is actually wielded on the federal level, was basically by hook and by crook. Because originally the US was not designed in this way. So if you think about something like the National Guard is the descendant of state militias, which were basically fully under control of the state governors. So they were, for all intents and purposes, basically state-level armies. And the way, and this was not seen as a negative. This was seen as, this is how it should be. Of course, every state should have their own, military forces to call upon. We can't leave that to the federal government. That would be crazy. And the way this was circumvented was not by abolishing the state, militias. They still exist. They've just been neutered. But, the federal government moved in and said, tanks are really expensive. Attack helicopters, they're super expensive. And let's not think about, F-16. You can't maintain that by, a sales tax on tobacco or whatever in New Hampshire. That's never going to work. We, the federal government, we will selflessly help you pay for it. We'll call it the National Guard. And you'll still have access to it. It'll be just like it used to be. It's just that all of these fancy toys we're going to send you, we are the only ones who know how to pay for them and know how to maintain them. So if you want to repair your tank, sorry, you're going to have to send it to an RV depot. And on every level, this was how the states were co-opted. Basically, you can't pay for the highways, Georgia. You know who can? The federal government. So here's this free money to build new highways. And the unstated threat is that if you start, rocking the boat, you're going to have to come up with a new way to pay for this massive highway system that has been built, that has been locked in, that has a huge maintenance cost that you could never afford to pay just drawing on the economic resources of Georgia. Well, at this point, what is Trump going around threatening? He's saying, the federal government won't pay a single dollar to California anymore. If Gavin Newsom, wears a shirt that is blue, sorry, no more money. Oh, Soren Mamdani won. Oh, there's not going to be any more money to New York. And we're cutting down FEMA, and we might, nationalize the National Guard and stop sending money to that as well. So if you take that away, what's there to keep these stakes inside the fold? There's really not that much. You could say, well, we're all Americans. Oh yeah, sure. The country is insanely polarized. And even to the point where if Gavin Newsom went out tomorrow and said, from now on, we're going to have an independent economic policy, like a tariff policy against China, and he hinted that they might do this, I don't know, 70% of Californians would support him. This is blatantly unconstitutional. This is the one thing states are never allowed to have. They should never have foreign relations with foreign powers. That is exclusively the provenance of the federal government. If he just said, yeah, well, fuck the Constitution, we're going to do whatever we want, we're going to do what's good for California, he would win by a landslide.
Well, that's a good opportunity to move on to food stamps and the shutdown. And I'll just set the table here and give a bit of detail. So we're recording this on November 5th. This is now the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history. It's at 36 days now, probably be even longer when this comes out. This is the first time in history that SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, did not pay out money during a shutdown. That's the largest anti-hunger program in the United States. So again, this missed payments on November 1st. We're, again, November 5th now. Whatever time this comes out, people just haven't been getting their money for this, for that amount of time. It's 42 million Americans are on SNAP. That's about 1 in every 8 Americans are on SNAP. There have been lawsuits about this. SNAP is paid out through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So they dragged the Trump administration into court. On Monday, the USDA said in court that they would partially fund SNAP. They're talking about funding it like halfway for the month of November, because there's a contingency fund with $4.5 billion in it. They say they need $8 or $9 billion a month to fully fund SNAP. The administration apparently has, tens of billions of dollars in tariff funds that it says it won't use. But, it's unclear if the administration is actually going to pay this out, how much they're going to pay out, and even if they start paying it out, when people will get the money. So New Jersey has announced today that they're going to have the National Guard helping out at food banks, because it's expected. I mean, this weekend there's going to be an overwhelming demand for food banks, because we're trying this experiment where 42 million Americans, as of right now, are not getting any SNAP funding. So I guess Malcolm, I mean, this does seem, historical bread riots. It does seem like a pre-revolutionary situation or whatever else. But I mean, what are you thinking right now, looking at this situation with food stamps in the United States?
I mean, I'm thinking it's really hard to be a doomer. Like it's such a, it's, you never get the sort of recognition that you obviously deserve.
And by the time it happens, everything will be in flames, so nobody will have time to say, "Oh, that guy, he was right all along."
well, it's even worse than that, Comrade Nagel. Like it's everything is in flames right now. Like think about this for a second. New Jersey is sending armed troops to help out with like food pantries and so on. You know why they're there? To prevent riots. They're not there to, lift the crates or whatever. Sure, they're going to do that. But they're there to stand there and make sure that people don't start killing themselves while waiting or killing each other while waiting in the bread lines. That's the actual reason. And so, this weekend, Americans will be queuing up for hours. Like we're talking 4 to 5 hours to get to like the guy handing out the bread. And the most unlucky people, and this already happened last week in DC, like you're standing in the queue for 3 to 4 hours, and then when you arrive, sorry, we're out of food. Come back next day. So if you told someone in 2018, okay, so in 6 years or 7 years, we're going to have, bread lines that are worse than the Soviet Union, with armed guards standing there to make sure that people don't start, cannibalizing each other. And this is going to be your new reality. They would say, dude, you're such an insane doomer. Like, you're talking about the apocalypse, the end of the world. Like, that's never going to happen. And now it's just a fucking Tuesday. And when it's just a fucking Tuesday, people say, dude, you said things would collapse, but they're just like, it's just an ordinary Tuesday where I'm standing in a bread line waiting for hours. I mean, this is kind of like the way human normalcy bias works, unfortunately. So like we're at the point where 5 or 6 years ago, people would go, oh man, this is the apocalypse. And then the apocalypse rolls around and it's just a big nothing burger. It's like people get used to anything. But if we take a step back and try to analyze this as part of a historical process, I'm sorry, but waiting 5 hours in a bread line with National Guard troops standing there to make sure there are no riots, like this is end of regime level stuff. Like this, it feels like a normal Tuesday because you still have to go to work, you still have to figure out a way to find food. But like this is how it was like during the February Revolution or the October Revolution. People still had to go to work then. This was how it was in Russia when the Soviet Union collapsed. People still had to go to work then, those that were lucky enough to have it. And the growing mass of unlucky people had to stand in food lines. And the food lines were probably shorter than they are in the US today, or are about to be. So like this is a worse situation in objective terms. Of course it doesn't feel that way because it didn't feel like that way either when the USSR was collapsing. People only figure that out. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's also analysts saying things like, here's my theory on why there won't be any riots. There can't be any riots in America because it's such a brilliantly designed system, blah, blah, blah. But like there already were riots. Like the BLM riots were just a couple of years ago. And Like all the public statues were taken down and the place was torched. Like that already happened.
Yeah, oh man, Americans, they don't know how to riot about like things. Yeah, they do. I'm sorry. And also, like anyone who says, well, there's this new fancy ideological political reason. Sorry, like these things are hard coded into the human biology. Like if you don't get enough food, you have like bespoke biological mechanisms that make you grab a pitchfork. Like riot like that. You can't deprogram people from that.
Yeah.
That. Yeah,
Angela, you're saying analysts are saying this, but we should give credit. One of the sharpest analysts in America, the Lindy Man, is the one. He has a piece out on his Substack. Basic argument being America does not fear the underclass. Grind set ideology here makes the poor blame themselves. And I'll just quote a paragraph from it. Every year, and he's talking about rural America here. Every year, standardized tests, college admissions, companies and corporate recruiters identify the most talented young people in struggling towns and urban areas and pull them away to opportunity hubs. These people rarely return. What they leave behind are hollowed out communities stripped of potential leaders, social networks, and organizational capacity. So he's making the argument that the American funnel system just kind of extracts, natural protest or riot leaders or whatever, and moves them to, the opportunity hubs like New York or Los Angeles. And so the people left behind are not really a threat to the system. And I think you both disagree with that, but we should put a name to people making the argument.
Yes, sorry. Well, I just want to add another counter argument. Aside from the fact that it's, the riots already happened just a few years ago, and there's no reason why they wouldn't again. There is a little bit of truth to the idea that moving kind of rooted communities out of cities is a good way to do riot control. And that's why you can get riots happening much more easily in a lot of European cities where there's still that kind of housing. But in general, like Malcolm said, food just overrides any social construct that you can come up with. And but also this idea that the system finds a place for anyone who's got the talent and the drive, that is so not true. It is shockingly not true. Like, it's actually such a courtier system. One of the fantasies of people who believe that this system is perfect and it won't, it will just magically float through all of these historical patterns. This is one of the core things that they believe, that in the old world you have to be related to someone, or you have to have a title or whatever, to get ahead. But in America, basically anyone who has talent and ambition get ahead. But nobody, like, for example, nobody who has been critical of Israel for several decades has been permitted to be inside the system at all. Now, if the American government was behaving rationally as an imperial government, purely with its own rational calculations, it would have noticed this and stopped doing it a long time ago. Because you can't have every a person with a noble character, right, who tells the truth. All of those people are absolutely out of the system and they simply cannot get in. All that is allowed inside are courtiers. Courtiers will get things wrong. They always say, Brussels and Beijing, those governments are just full of courtiers because they're not really democratic or something like that. But the American system is absolutely riddled with this problem and has been for decades. It's only coming out now in public conversation, but it's been a problem for decades. So therefore, it's actually selecting people who are ignoble, who are willing to say things that are not true in order to gain a bit of status. You can't run anything properly with that. There are so many people all over the world, not even just inside America, who have been essentially alienated from, and even thinking like, how do we get out of the American imperial system, specifically because of this Israel problem, that anyone who speaks truthfully on this issue for several decades now has been at least frozen out, or maybe much worse, completely personally and financially destroyed. So, I mean, that's like that idea alone. The first bit, which is riots won't happen, they've already happened. And the second bit is talented people get, satisfaction from being allowed inside the system. That's absolutely less true, I would say, in America than just about anywhere, because of that mainly Israeli courtier problem.
Yeah, and there's another problem here. If you think about, let's take a step back and think about the current the material political situation in the United States. The plan here from the red team, and you can really get a sense for this if you follow someone like Steve Bannon, who is intelligent, and that's why if you read between the lines, you can see how panicked he and people like him are. Bannon was on the record talking about a third Trump term and so on. This is just complete and utter nonsense. And everyone can see the health issues surrounding Trump getting worse also. So he won't be physically capable of doing a third term. But Bannon is still talking about that. Is it because he's blind? No. Is it because he's incredibly stupid? No. Bannon realizes that what the red team has is a incredibly personalist court system, to borrow from you, Angela, here, surrounded by various courtiers fighting for attention from the Orange King. There's absolutely no idea what to do afterwards. The factions can't agree to anything. They can't actually win elections without some weird, badly understood magic that Trump apparently has. So there's no horizon. There's no day after for MAGA once Trump is gone. And Trump he's not long for this world, at least in being lucid politically. He was up there talking only when we're recording this, a couple of hours ago, about how America had already entered its golden age. The economy has never been as good. Groceries have fallen 25%. Everyone in the world respects the U.S. What I'm hearing from the inside is basically that Trump mentally, this happens a lot with really old folks, by the way, when their brains start turning to mush. Trump, his main concern is real estate development inside the White House. He is incredibly concerned about the decor inside the Oval Office. He spends a lot of brain cycles on that. When he redid the Rose Garden, he basically polled everyone working, at the cabinet level, what tiles he should pick for the Rose Garden, because he tore up all the turf and replaced it with tiles, made it into some sort of outdoor patio. And then you have the ballroom, of course. But the ballroom is just one of 6 or 7 different irons he has in the fire, where he's basically treating the White House like some casino in Vegas that he's just bought. And this is quite natural, because once your brain turns to mush from old age, the thing that is farther in falls away, later than the other stuff. So, getting him to care about food stamps or whatever, that's kind of iffy at this point. Getting him to care about stuff he did 40 years ago, he knows how to do that still. So, the king has no successor. The courtiers can't agree to anything. And all the panic talk is about we'll put him on the golden throne. A funny sort of coincidence that was named in Warhammer 40K. They'll put Trump on the golden throne, so he'll never stop being president, and that way the day after will never come. And we'll also abolish elections, or do some gerrymandering where it's mathematically impossible for Democrats to ever win an election again. We'll just do that by executive fiat, so there's no day after. There is no plan here, people. No plan whatsoever.
Well, I just want to talk a minute about and get both your thoughts on the propaganda that's being used to sell starving people, like to justify starving people and cutting off their food stamps. I saw an AI video of a Fox 5 reporter interviewing a black woman, and she goes, "Yeah, I get 2,500 food stamps a month, but I sell it for 1,200 cash. I know it's wrong, but you got to do what you got to do," or something like that. And this is, it's hitting the boomer community like crack cocaine.
Yeah.
This is like, of course, it's just black people stealing, so we have to, starve 42 million people to near death. But so there's that. There's, the kind of American racial element to welfare. That's one thing I want to hear your thoughts on. But the other thing I wanted to hear about, I always hear, the racial identitarians, they'll attack, people who are more class focused, such as myself. Sometimes they'll talk about Yugoslavia, and they'll say, oh, in Yugoslavia, when Yugoslavia broke down, it wasn't that people went to their class groups. It was ethnic and racial groupings. People kind of grouped themselves ethnically and racially, just naturally or whatever else. But I just find it very funny, well, ironic at least, that the majority of SNAP recipients are white. This is still a white majority country. And so, of course, you have all these self-styled white nationalists online who, they use that to describe themselves. And they're just totally fine with starving white people, millions, tens of millions of white people and white children to death. And so it seems like, actually, no, it seems like class solidarity, even for self-styled white nationalists, overrides any sort of white racial solidarity. But what do you two think about kind of the politics and the propaganda of food stamp starvation?
Can I just say, I think that I often try to figure out the psychology of this stuff, right? And I think fundamentally, rightoids who are online, okay, this is kind of who we're talking about.
Right.
I think that basically the main thing is that they don't understand statecraft. Like they don't understand why states do things. And so everything seems irrational to them. Like, why would you give people free food? You know what I mean? It's basically just like they literally haven't thought through really basic statecraft things. Like states, came up with this stuff precisely to avoid revolutions. And I mean, food stamps are the ultimate bare minimum, right? Because it's not even like in most European countries you would get the dole, like you would get just a chunk of money and you can spend it whatever way you want. It's specifically food. It is designed for the sole purpose of avoiding revolutions. And, if you just think about or even something like, I was describing the kind of Sorosism, the American imperial ideology, right? Human rights, anti-racism, mass immigration, all that stuff. Like that's part of the liberal American internationalist kind of worldview for export. But as Malcolm was saying, it's part of the economic system that instead of moving peasants into the cities, America, this vast continent that was largely empty, moved immigrants in. So it's like they don't. I don't know. It's like I think whenever I'm baffled by their strange responses to things, I think that is actually the answer most of the time. They simply don't understand. They're not able to even intuit. I think like more liberal and leftist people get it by intuition, kind of like why a state would do something like this. It's not just because they think racism is bad and they want to be nice to the little girl in Ellis Island, in rags or whatever, there's a rational statecraft policy there and they have to sell it in a particular way. So honestly, I think that's the main answer. They're so clueless that they're so unintuitive that they actually just haven't thought of very basic, now like hundreds of years old kind of modern statecraft.
Yeah, and there's a very basic point that can be made here that's just buttresses your point, which is one of the main narratives here in terms of what should we do instead of food stamps? There's been, food stamps, like it's socialism, it's people getting dependent on the government, blah, 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 blah. We should have, food pantries instead, and maybe we should send some money to them. But it's like, if you're concerned with making sure the poor have enough food to eat, I mean, food stamps is the most effective way to do it. Think about it. Like, you have this system of food distribution. We call it grocery stores. And then you have the system of resource allocation and payment. We call it, the basic like bank transfer, electronic payment system. And so if you can just piggyback on all of this already existing infrastructure, you essentially have to pay nothing extra. Like, the grocery stores will handle through the systems they already have to figure out how many bags of chips to order and whatever. Like, it takes them very little work to do the work of, distributing food to the poor. And, payment for it can be handled super easily. Like, the only physical infrastructure you need is a plastic card. Think about like replacing that with like food pantries. Like, you would need to buy trucks, you would need to buy warehouses, you would need to hire people to work distributing the food. It would basically be like the most inefficient way to handle it. It would be incredibly expensive if the goal is to just get food into people's hands. But the issue here is just that, like, we're basically all of this is psychodrama for boomers and Xers and other people like stuck in the past. And again, like, it's been the story of the US political system itself for these last 8 years. Like, what was the big narrative about the Biden administration? It was just like a big old Potemkin village where you have to protect this sundowning octogenarian from the realization that, like, we ain't in Kansas anymore, Jack. And like, Biden was too decrepit to even, like, he didn't really have like the physical equipment in terms of a working brain to actually assimilate new like news or new impressions or sort of new facts on the ground. And so the entire system was built to protect them from, like, America's the most powerful, like, NATO will never be defeated. Like, the Chinese, they make cheap plastic crap in their garages, while we in America, we have real factories. Like, it's the same with the whole food stamps discourse. Like, you have Elon Musk saying, oh, well, when AI happens, there won't be any factories anymore. Like, humans will be completely out of work. And then you have people saying, yeah, that's so true, Elon, but we can't have food stamps because people need to go down the road and just give the grocery store manager a firm handshake and start sweeping the floor for free until they get hired. And it's like, yeah, maybe that worked 50, 60 years ago. 50, 60 years ago, like the measure of wealth in China was like whether you had a bicycle or not. We're not in that world anymore.
It's also the working poor. They don't even seem to know that bit of it.
Yeah.
The wages, the compensation for productivity is so low, and the profits on non-productivity, like, various forms of rent, is so high that it's just impossible to live, on a minimum wage if you have a family.
Yeah, Malcolm, you were making this point online, but some of these rightoids, they're shocked. Oh, we have 40 million people on food stamps. Why don't they just get jobs? And you were pointing out, well, Amazon's laying off tens of thousands of people. UPS is laying off tens of thousands of people. I mean, besides that, most of them do have jobs, most of the ones that are able-bodied. I mean, it's like, where are they going to get these fucking jobs from?
Yeah. I mean, like, they can't. This is like the Republicans saying, like from now on, every school has to be above average for our state. And any school that falls below the average, we're just going to cut the funding. Then someone says, well, the average is like calculated based on all the schools. Like by definition, 50% are going to fall below the average, right? No, we think everyone should be above the average. Like, we're basically at that level of, well, I mean, path dependency, I guess you could call it. Like, we've already decided to do this, so now we have to keep going with it, even though, like, it doesn't work. And again, as I alluded to earlier, like this, people have to face the music. Like this isn't like just a flesh wound or whatever. Like this is just, oh no, these aren't end of empire bread lines. These are patriotic, like, you know, golden age bread lines. Come the fuck off it. Like, it's over, man. Like, it's there's no plan for a new economic model. Like they want to cut off, and this is one thing we haven't talked about, but it's kind of a piece with this. Like the whole Obamacare stuff. Like you're talking like normal people without pre-existing conditions or who aren't super old, whatever, like normal people, like independent sort of people running small businesses who have kids. They're getting hit with premium increases of like, I don't know, like a deductible of $12,000 plus like a yearly payment plan of $40,000 or something. Like, if you get sick, you have to find $50,000 in after-tax income. Like my stepdad had a hip replacement recently, and so my mom was like really black pill because, you know, we're supposed to live in Sweden, which is like this super socialist paradise. And she said that like they basically told her, you can wait in line for 3 years and then it might be 4 years, but you'll get it for free, or you could pay to jump the line, and then you can get the operation. And she said, like, there's like it's not feasible to wait 4 years for this, so we're just gonna pay. She had to pay $12,000, the equivalent in like Swedish crowns, and she said this like, oh man, like. Can you imagine paying $12,000? And it's like, dude, that's the deductible if you have healthcare in the US. Does Trump have a plan for this? Does Mike Johnson have a plan? Like, surely you'll jest. Of course they don't. And again, you could just say, well, we can rationalize this. We could presumably get the costs down. So we're only like, collapsing to the level of Sweden, where if you get sick, you have to pay $12,000 in total. Because, I mean, tax rates in Sweden aren't particularly higher nowadays than they are in the US. But you have to realize that a lot of very rich people would lose out. And politics in an age of negative sum games means that anyone who loses out will flip over the table. And there's just something dishonest about like complaining about Soren or the Democrats. Like, oh man, they want handouts or else they're going to flip over the table. Yeah, well, I mean, that just makes them smart at some level. Because that's the only sort of politics that exists.
Well, when you mentioned the plan there, that does kind of bring me to my last question for you two. But also, if there's anything else on this shutdown and food stamps we haven't gotten to, please do feel free to interject that as well. But my last question is, why is the Trump administration doing this? Like, is there any sort of 12D chess here going on? Because we mentioned, the money, it was a choice to not pay out the food stamps on November 1st. They could have paid out of the contingency funds. There were other sources of money. This is, as we mentioned, the first time that SNAP has not been paid out. They made a choice to not pay out SNAP. they seem to be slow walking the payouts now, even though they've told a court they will make the payout. So, are they trying to provoke riots to get the Insurrection Act? Are they just trying to like shrink the government by any means necessary? Is it chicken with the Democrats? Is there any sort of plan at all? Or I know it's just kind of speculative, but why do you think, in your view, they made the decision to try to kind of gamble with starving people in America?
Well, I think we're getting to the point where all talk of plans, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting to the point where, like, if someone is talking about plans, like, this is a post hoc rationalization. But at the onset of this, I think they really believed that. They were basically doing the greatest hits of Obama. Like, we're the coalition of the ascendant. Like, the people we're up against are, relics, dinosaurs. We just have to kick the door in and the whole rotten building will collapse. All of that stuff, like this hubris. Plus, as everyone is starting to like move away from the Trump can do no wrong, like he can never fail, he can only be failed, which was the basic explanatory model for the first 9 months of this admin. After this complete rout, it wasn't just Soren that won, but like every election that the Democrats had, they just ran the table. But after this, you're starting to see not the good Tsar, bad boyers cope, but rather, like, this is on some level Trump's fault, because he creates these bubbles around himself and he likes it where you can't actually tell him bad news. Like, he's fundamentally good and he cares about the economy and all of that stuff, but he has to stop with this, coping he does. He has to stop making these safe spaces for himself. Well, that is kind of what's going on. And all the planning is happening within these sort of safe spaces where you can't actually say, oh, well, I don't really think we're having 0% inflation and 25% dropped grocery prices. I think grocery prices are actually going up, and that is going to drive a lot of turnout. But you can't actually say that to these people. And so, and again, I think on some level, the smart people in the administration know that we're not talking years, we're talking months left on this political system. You know that Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio is no dummy. They've moved into military bases. Like they live on military bases now in the general's quarters. Why? So that they will be safe in case there's a sudden outburst of violence on the streets. This is not something I've read on, so like Q told me this on Twitter. Like, no, like they've admitted as much. Like, Hegseth lives on a military base now. Rubio lives on a military base now. Kristi Noem lives on a military base now. Like, they are preparing for this stuff. They've issued orders that the army will have to stand up so-called QRF forces, quick response forces. That should be, like, by January, I think is the deadline. Like, they want, I think, 50,000 soldiers or something. That should be, or like 1,000 soldiers per state. That should be ready to go on a moment's notice to just deploy in order to quell riots. So, I mean, they're panicked. But the issue is just that the plans themselves are the products of people just winging it. And this QRF thing is the perfect example of that, because we have a long history of people saying, oh, well, the people on the streets of Paris are mad. What am I going to do? I'm going to send in the military with, loaded guns. And the problem is that the military they train to escalate violence. If someone throws a rock, you shoot them in the head. Because if you don't escalate on the battlefield when someone tries to kill you, you get killed. And the point of the military is to kill the other guy. This is not how cops operate, by the way. Like, a cop, if you give him a shove and he pulls out his gun and he blasts you, that is, him failing to do his job. So cops train to de-escalate and soldiers train to escalate violence. Well, I mean, if your job, or if your idea of how to solve the problem of rioting is to send in people who will turn a riot into a massacre, well, that's what the British did in order to create the American Revolution. It's what Louis XVI did in order to create the French Revolution. It's what Charles X did to create the 1940 Revolution in France, and so on and so on. Like, on and on it goes. But, I mean, this is their plan. So, I mean, it's that kind of level of planning we're dealing with. It's like, there are plans, but they are never really, created as part of some sort of analysis or historical understanding, is what I'm getting at here.
Angela, any other thoughts on this?
No, I considered, I think you were saying this possibility that it will allow a rollout of some kind of massive urban militarization or, something like that, like a further escalation of that, because people will be fearful during riots and stuff. But I just feel like food is sort of the final straw. Like it's there are other ways you could do it that wouldn't be so. It's like they would be picking the one thing that is most certain to lead to the situation that they're presumably imagining when they live on these military bases, right? Like, there's no possible calculation there where this is a good idea that I can possibly think of.
Yeah, can I just interject one thing here, like pop quiz? The level of food insecurity among American civilians is at 12%. So 12% of the population is like severely food insecure. Like, they don't know where their next meal is going to come from, as a general rule. Or they have real trouble affording groceries. What is the level of food insecurity among enlisted in the military? Take a guess.
20%?
25%.
Wow.
So you were pretty close. But if you think about, like, we're going to use the military as this reliable tool to deal with people being dissatisfied by not being able to afford food, I guess there's at least one problem with that plan. So, sorry, I interrupted, but it was just to underline what you were saying here.
Yeah, I mean, you're angering you're angering your own national military and people also who work for the government, because they've been not getting paid as well.
Yes, sending in the troops who are not getting paid to shoot the people who are starving. I mean, it just seems like historically that's the one thing you can't really cut is the police and the military. Bad things happen when you try to do austerity to them.
And it's like it reminds me of reading about just about every regime ends this way, right? I was thinking of the Sultan in the, just like bringing up the drawbridge and just hanging out in the palace until everything goes away, until all the bad problems that can't be solved go away. There's no, at a time when there appears to be such scarcity of money to do the most basic actually things that the state is supposed to do just to keep the basic thing running. All of these people these figures in the government are living on military bases, but also private figures like Barry Weiss, as you were pointing out, Sean, and all of the tech guys. They all are spending, vast sums of money on just their own personal security. I mean, again, that's like something that was just unthinkable before. I mean, that description sounds like already a failed state.
Well, we want to thank you as always, Malcolm Kyeyune, for the ray of sunshine. For
I think, look, if you really hated the 2024 election, like the good news is there will never be another one. So like, I don't see what's so negative about that.
Well, I think we'll have you back, Malcolm, to check on this once the three of us are all safely doing this podcast from Europe. Once we've all emigrated and gotten the hell out. Well, we still can.
Oh, wait, before we go, can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Okay, because I actually wanted to ask Malcolm this because it's on my mind a lot. So since World War II, Europe is basically, the understanding is that Europe will be pacified and not sovereign, but it will exist under the umbrella of American protection of NATO. And if America falls apart, as it seems to be, that is surely going to go as well. So our escape plan, the escape plan here is Europe, right? What do you think will happen there? Can Europe transition? Like, will there be a moment basically where the American troops all leave or are forced to leave, and Europe somehow very rapidly transitions to like a unified military body of some kind? What do you think is going to happen there?
I don't think it's going to transition to a unified military body. I mean, this is kind of would be an episode in its own, because it's a very interesting question, and I have spent quite a lot of time trying to think through it, and I'm still working on that. But what I would say is basically, this is kind of pertinent to the collapse of Zionism in the U.S. Like, you had a world system, an ideology, just as sort of totalitarian or totalizing as communism, socialism in the USSR. That basically took hold of the West after World War II. And I've called it a couple of different things, like the post-World War II ideology, or like the sort of secular Christianity of the Holocaust, or whatever. I still need to work on a snappy term for it. But the point here is just that the problem that Europe faces is the same problem faced by, I don't know, like the Socialist Republic of Kazakhstan or whatever, at the fall of the Soviet Union. Or even better, what East Germany faced, which is, before you can be anything, you need to have an ideology, a sort of view of the world where you fit in somehow. And that is going away. Like, I do think that European politicians will be pretty, just like, machine politicians in Czechoslovakia or Hungary or whatever. They just like changed the shingles on the office and said, oh, well, we're basically liberal. Like, we love pride parades and we love like free market capitalism. Like, we're the best free market capitalists in Romania. Like, don't worry about the fact that the sign still says Communist Party of Romania. Like, we haven't gotten around to changing it yet. Like, you're going to see that, but it's going to be delayed because there's nothing to change into. And figuring that out will be a very traumatic process. But I don't really think that Europe, it's like, I mean, the doom and gloom you're going to see here is something like ask any Latvian, where it's like 50% of the population, young population, leaves, and you have like economic stagnation or whatever. But like, it's not an apocalypse. It's not like bloody revolutionary war or whatever. But it's just kind of this malaise, listlessness, as you try to figure out some sort of way forward that, like, basically, we have been part of almost an overt religious system that is now at the edge of collapse. And that is a much bigger problem than, I don't know, like, inflation is 3%, 4%, it might be 5% next year. Like, those are just numbers on some level. But imagine telling like a medieval peasant that, okay, well, God is dead, the saints are not in heaven, like they can't hear you if you pray to them. There's absolutely nothing. Like, you would, if you made that case really convincingly, so that the person you were talking to had no choice but to accept it, that would be quite literally, or at least figuratively, that would be the end of the world. And then you would have the problem of, okay, well, the world has just ended, at least the world my brain was living in. And now my body is walking around in this, like, there's still air to breathe and there's still like trees and birds are singing and all of that stuff. But it's not a world I have any business being in. So, I mean, that's the sort of crisis that awaits Europe.
I mean, my understanding is that the imperative of American foreign policy in Eurasia is basically to stop a Russian European like unified bloc of some kind. Not that it would become the same country, but to have like a kind of more or less what Germany and Russia were, an infrastructural connection that was being built before the pipeline was destroyed and everything. And so keeping Russia and Europe in perpetual fear and war with each other stops a kind of a hegemon from emerging that would be a kind of a competitor that would knock America out of the region. But even if you didn't have that, and even if you didn't, if that alliance were not possible to put back together, the reason that the USSR, USA, and China emerged as these, kind of super states with the capacity to be world hegemons is because they did go through that unification process, continental unification process, like Napoleon kind of wanted to do. And what is the esoteric message of the post-45 ideology? It's kind of saying that would be the most evil thing that could possibly happen. Because because Europe, a unified Europe would be similar to a unified China in the sense that it would be almost by definition a civilization power. It wouldn't be a liberal abstraction like the USA. You know what I mean? So like Ursula von der Leyen says, we are the European family, right? That is a fundamentally racial, civilizational category. But at the same time, because she's a post-war German, right, she has to have this has to be constantly genuflecting to the post-45 religion. And of course, the religion is constructed to benefit the hegemon of the post-45 era. But in other words, what I'm saying is, like, if you were to have a unified developmentalist continental system in Europe, it would be civilizational by definition. And that, to me, it just seems like the post-45 religion says that is the ultimate evil. A state-directed, centralized, civilizational superpower,
Yes.
is the worst thing that could ever happen.
I think the issue here, and again, like, we should do some sort of separate episode on this, but like, where I'll just leave it is, I think that the normal way to view this is that the von der Leyen genuflecting about, like, the horrors of the Holocaust and like Germany's debt to history and all of that stuff. It's kind of like this imposed penance that, like, okay, I have to go through the motions here just to not like invite the demons or whatever, but like I have this other separate goal or vision or whatever, which I have to do compromises with all of this post-World War II stuff. My basic analysis is completely opposite of that. What I think is actually going on is that the post-World War II, like, genuflection, like, this is the in some ways the fulfillment of sort of like Christian European civilization in a way, like that we have since World War II, and this grew really organically. It's actually really interesting to trace like the growth of Christian Zionism as an idea, for example. But basically, like, this is a religious faith that is deeply held, and the faith where the Holocaust serves as like the sort of humanist version of the crucifixion, dividing history into a before and after, and offering humans living after this sort of miraculous transformation through suffering and through the sacrifice of blood, like giving people in the New Testament era the ability to create like a unified world system, like, you know, feminism, for example, like escaping 100,000 years of patriarchy or whatever, just using human reason. Like, that stuff wasn't possible in the bad old days. It's possible now. Why? Because the Holocaust happened. And I think that this is kind of like the unconscious faith that powers people like Ursula von der Leyen, like a very strong distinction of the world before and the world after, and the endless possibilities unlocked by the metaphysical, you know, confluence of the Holocaust. If you take away that faith, which is in its DNA, it's just like the Christian metaphysics, like it's the Christian story about the world, but with a collective blood sacrifice, and a sort of humanist salvation instead of a metaphysical one. But if you take that faith away, there's nothing there to replace it with. You are telling the medieval peasant, God is dead, the saints are all gone, enjoy walking around on this ball of mud that's going to be swallowed by the sun in 1 billion years. I hope you can find some meaning, but there's nothing up in the sky, man. Von der Leyen won't be able to survive, like, intellectually and maybe even physically. I think we're going to see a lot of like cults and like Gen Xer and boomer suicides in the years ahead once this faith collapses. But my sense is just that, like, the real barrier to like a resurgent, like a Napoleon vision of Europe or whatever, is that, I mean, that vision already existed, like a universalizing Europe. That's what everyone believed in the 90s. Like, Europe was the model for all of humanity. And it wasn't the model of all of humanity in some, like, everyone's going to have to pay taxes to Brussels. Like, that was not seen, that would be, gosh, like, who cares about where you pay taxes? Like, this is the salvation of mankind through a sort of universal world system where everyone can reach enlightenment and everyone can reach grace. And take that away, and I don't know what comes after.
Well, we'll have to have you back to have a follow-up episode on Europe and the future of that. It's just very interesting. So thank you as always, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Just very dispiriting but fascinating conversation as usual. But Malcolm, where can people find you? And is there anything you would like to advertise while you're here?
Well, not really. I mean, I like, they can, if they... Those who know, like, I'm on Twitter, but I won't actually give out my account. Like, you have to...
Just search for the smartest and most racist anime Nazis and which account they're following, and eventually you'll find Malcolm.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, the strongest defender of the Yuche ideology on Twitter. No, I don't really have anything else to shill. Like, I will have an essay in American Affairs in 5 months or whatever on what me and Angela just talked about. So if you're interested in this stuff, I will lay out this stuff much more fully there, and maybe we can do an episode on it as well, like before then. But yeah, the shilling I leave for the future.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Well, thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Angela. And thank you, the listener. Please do sound off in the comments with any thoughts you had on this discussion here. If you enjoyed it, you want to hear more of myself and Angela, you can become a premium subscriber at patreon.com/Rocinantepod. That's ROCINANTEPOD. Or you can also subscribe at Angela Nagel's Substack, angelanagel.substack.com, where if you subscribe there, you get the podcast, but also you get access to her delightful and illuminating writing. But as always, we very much appreciate you, the listener, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vengan a ver vuesas mercedes el retablo de la libertad de Melisendra, que es una de las cosas más